We finish with Iran, which has the fourth highest death toll globally from the COVID-19 pandemic. That currently stands at 2,640. Now, these numbers have been trickling in as the Islamic Republic continues to face criticism for its delayed response to the worst coronavirus outbreak in the region. Officials, for their part, say U.S. sanctions are holding up the country's efforts to import medical supplies. For analysis on this story, I'd like to welcome Bijan Khajehpour to the program. He's an economist and he joins us from Vienna. Thank you so much for being with us here on France 24, sir. Is Iran's problem as cut and dry as some people might think? We have sanctions on the one side and corruption, which you've extensively spoken about, on the other.
I believe that both factors have played a role. I mean, it's not mutually exclusive to talk about sanctions and the impact, the negative impact of sanctions on the situation in Iran, but also to blame corruption and incompetence and mismanagement. So it's important not to view this as a black and white situation.
It's not a black and white situation. Would it be accurate at this stage to say that the Iranian government is getting desperate because they have actually released a list of requirements, equipment to battle COVID-19?
Definitely. I mean, I don't know if the word desperate is the right word, but there is a definite need for medical supplies, medical equipment, and also medicine. And even though these items, I mean, you would hear the U.S. government say that there are no sanctions on medical supplies, which is on paper true, but the reality is that as a result of banking sanctions and insurance sanctions and also transportation sanctions, it's almost impossible to import the items that Iran needs. So it's a situation that has definitely undermined Iran's potential response to this pandemic. And the sooner these sanctions are lifted or some waivers are introduced, the better Iran definitely can manage this crisis.
Bijan Khajehpour, let's say the sanctions are lifted, medical supplies start trickling into the country. There is fear that the equipment could be misused. We've seen this, examples like this in other corrupt states like Algeria, for example. Is it possible to somehow monitor this aid to ensure that it actually ends up in the right hands?
Well, Iran has a very complex power structure. I mean, we can be sure that the professionals in Iran, whether they are the medical professionals or the technocrats, would make sure that the imported equipment and medicine are used to really tackle the pandemic-related issues. But there are always parallel power centers and institutions that may engage in corruption or in hoarding of products. There is a desire in Iran to show that the government can be competent and can tackle crises like that. There is also a very interesting response from civil society. We have to remember that part of the corruption and mismanagement in Iran has been to clamp down on civil society and limit the space on civil society. Now we suddenly have a situation where the civil society has to be active, and it is active. So it's not a bleak situation, but it's definitely challenging. How we control it in a proud culture like Iran remains to be seen. But I hope that they find solutions to really open the gates for importing the needed equipment and medicine.
And lastly, I want to shift the focus slightly, if we can, amid this crisis. We know that Iranian authorities have actually very temporarily released around 100,000 prisoners. However, they've left behind 50,000 people. Some of them are, of course, dual nationals. And you are more than familiar with one of these cases, the case of your very good friend, Siamak Namazi.
Yes, it's a very tragic situation for Siamak and other prisoners, especially the dual nationals who have been imprisoned, without any reason. They're all innocent, and they're really they're pawns in a political game between Iran and the U.S. And it's a very tragic situation. In the ward where Siamak is detained, there have been corona cases. And it's very sad to see that they managed to release, as you say, 100,000 prisoners, and also just today to announce an extension of the furlough they have given to these prisoners. And I'm happy for every prisoner who is on furlough right now. But it's very sad for someone like Siamak, who has been in prison for 4.5 years on trumped-up charges without any reason, that he still hasn't been given his legal right to be sent on furlough. And I really hope that the Iranian authorities will manage to address this issue. This is an issue that is upsetting Iranians inside Iran, Iranians outside Iran. And right now, with this crisis, Iran and the Iranian authorities need the goodwill of every single Iranian, especially the Iranian diaspora, to tackle the issues.
Absolutely. Human rights violations, bringing Iranians of all sides together there. Bijan Khajehpour, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us here on France 24.